Sometimes a work of art comes along that defines an era. Something captures the spirit of a moment in time so well that it becomes a piece of history itself. The COVID-19 pandemic will probably be the most significant historical event that happens in most of our lifetimes. And for the people fortunate enough not to have lost somebody close to them, I believe this time period can be most well defined by extreme isolation. In some areas, lockdowns carried on for months on end, leaving most people alone in their homes to be entertained by the internet exclusively.
We got movies and doctors and fantasy sports and a bunch of colored pencil drawings of all the different characters in Harry Potter fucking each other. Welcome to the internet.
I believe that Bo Burnham's Inside is one of those works of art that we can look back on as definitive of that moment in time when we were all stuck inside, worried that everyone we knew was going to get sick or go slowly insane from lack of contact with other human beings. Inside captures the political and emotional state of the average American in 2020 exceedingly well. It takes a look at the cultural factors that combine to keep us inside and slowly drive us crazy after months of doom scrolling. So let's take a look at Inside and lay out why I believe that this is a historic piece of art. Instead of my usual likes and dislikes, for this video I'm going to use a list of key points because many of the things that I want to talk about don't fall into likes and dislikes. To begin this story, you need to understand what it was like when this special was released. This was the first comedy special from Bo Burnham since I was in high school. It had been years of nothing. And then, out of nowhere, in the middle of a pandemic, here it is.
But look, I made you some content. Daddy made you your favorite open wide.
I was also extremely depressed at the time. Bo Burnham's stark depiction of mental illness struck me. I scribbled some loose ideas for my own creative works on my whiteboard and found myself convinced that it wouldn't be long until Bo Burnham met an early death. Perhaps my obsession stemmed from my own connection with Burnham's pain. Great art has this ability to connect with its viewers. To connect with someone the way this special connected with me is something really special. It's this connection that I think artists are looking for. So, with that bit of context in mind, let's continue on. Inside begins by outlining the struggle between comedy and what's good for society, and trying to find some balance between the two. The first song suggests pretty blatantly that this seems to be a ridiculous idea. It clowns on the self-importance someone must feel in order to think that they can use their passion to save the world. The issue of Burnham's perceived self-importance is one that he addresses repeatedly throughout the special. During the spoof to the Unpaid Intern song, he says he feels that his songs need to mean something, and then he says that he feels pretentious for even thinking that.
It's pretty unlikable that I feel this need, this desperate need to be seen as intelligent.
He essentially runs through the same practice that a therapist would run you through with the same kind of thought.
It's a defense mechanism.
I think fundamentally Burnham's message here is that you shouldn't think quite so highly of yourself. Like some lowly comedian could actually affect real change. It's my belief, however, that you should believe your actions can affect change. However, your actions personally matter far more than your actions in art or in your work. If you make the choice to live within a defined moral structure and then choose to be the best version of yourself, that action can affect real change. Not by affecting direct structural change, but by motivating the people around you to do the same. A simple cascade effect from this can make hundreds of people changed by a simple action that you've done. Bo also uses the first song to address his primary social critique, which is that this constant consumption of media is slowly rotting our brains. This isn't exactly a hot take, especially 4 years later when more and more people are referring to brain rot when describing what's in their TikTok feed. Specifically, Bo spells out the decline that he's gone through being trapped alone in a room with nothing but the internet. The result of this is Bo finding himself back on a stage in an absolute panic because he's faced with real people, with the real audience again. Point 3 is the politics. One of the highlights of Inside is the song How the World Works, a strangely upbeat tune with some serious societal criticism. It comes as very little surprise that a comedian who's made his rounds through Hollywood leans pretty far left of center and finds himself very unafraid to express that point of view into a camera. The political beliefs behind the lyrics of the song, however, is not what strikes me. What is truly brilliant about How the World Works is the shockingly unsubtle symbolism. The song begins with Bo Burnham singing this upbeat, childish tune about working together, and then after the first verse, a new character is introduced, a sock puppet. The puppet, affixed to Bo's hand, spouts an overtly communist viewpoint.
The global network
network of capital essentially functions to separate the worker from the means of production. And
Well, its puppeteer laughs and smiles along. Then, towards the end of the song, the puppet takes a step too far, and the puppet master makes a very clear threat to keep it in line.
I'm sorry. Are you going to behave yourself?
Yes.
Yes. What?
Yes, sir.
Look at me.
Yes, sir.
That's better. That is how the world works.
The brilliance of this puppet being allowed to speak its mind up until it comes very close to and then finally crosses a line, and then it being immediately, swiftly, and intentionally put back in its place is an astounding visual. It makes the suggestion rather obviously that the social detractors of society are allowed to speak their minds so long as they don't get too organized, so long as they don't pose a real threat to the puppet masters. Though this pessimistic and frankly bleak worldview is not one that I find to be particularly healthy or useful, it's hard to deny that places in our society exist where we simply remain puppets of our ideology, allowed to speak our minds so long as we don't make too much progress threatening the puppet masters.
Jeffrey Bezos. Jeffrey Bezos.
The extension of this social criticism is layered throughout Inside, with references to Jeff Bezos
Jeffrey Bezos.
and class struggles layered throughout Inside. The real struggle in Inside, however, is not the social struggle. The real struggle is within Bo Burnham himself. Bo is his own enemy in the special. He oscillates between not finishing the special fast enough and then not wanting to finish it at all, while also being hyper aware that working on the special is providing a welcome distraction to his rapidly deteriorating mental health. It seems that Bo, at least the Bo presented to us in the special, has trouble finding balance with much of anything. He can't decide that comedy is a good enough goal for the world to put his focus into, and he seemingly can't decide if he's good enough for the world to even listen to. He struggles with this in the song Problematic, which seems to relive every tasteless joke he ever made, and quite literally begs somebody to hold him accountable.
Fucking sorry.
It comes across as though he wishes that nobody would look up to him at all, or at the very least that he wishes that he was perfect throughout the entirety of his life. This song expresses to me the danger of outing people for 10-year-old tweets and trying to paint them as bad people for things that they said on Twitter when they were 16 or 17. I'm only 24, but one thing that growing up the little bit that I have has taught me is that 16-year-olds are friggin' morons. Bo is consistently referring to the things that he made public in his youth in his song. Bo had the distinct misfortune of becoming a famous comedian at age 16. So every less than tasteful joke has been made public on YouTube for the whole world to see. If you're looking to punish people for every social boundary that they pushed too hard when they were 17 years old, nobody is going to be left unpunished. And in a world that doesn't allow people to make mistakes, especially young people to make mistakes, we end up in a world that doesn't allow people to grow at all. The second conflict of Inside is the struggle with the audience. Bo, again, at least the Bo depicted in Inside, seems to need the audience, while simultaneously resenting the fact that he needs them. Late in the show, Bo sings All Eyes on Me, which is a song that serves the express purpose of drawing the attention back onto Bo when it was on him the whole time. It's to spell out how badly he wishes to be the center of attention. This has been a theme in Bo Burnham's work before, too. It seems he really doesn't believe himself to be worthy of the audience that he has. The character seems to struggle to rectify this fact with the fact that he's been wildly successful and is obviously supremely talented. At one point, Bo literally holds the audience at knife point while thanking them for tuning in. If that isn't a direct metaphor for an unearned audience as well as the hostage situation that we have going on between us and our cell phones, I don't know what the hell it is. So, as we've kind of discussed, Inside fundamentally has two characters, Bo Burnham and the audience. You could also take this character as society or the world at large. Fundamentally, they're one and the same. This character really only exists as Bo describes them and interacts with them. This character does, however, have an on-screen representation through the camera. Near the beginning, we are faced directly with the camera, slowly zooming into the dark abyss that is the center of the lens. And as somebody who spends an inordinate amount of time staring into a camera lens, I can say this scene comes across as kind of distinctly disturbing to me. As the special continues and his mental health worsens, Bo finds himself more and more vulnerable to the audience. He gets angry on screen, he has dark conversations, he gets visibly irritated while delivering lines, he at one point is literally leaning on the camera while having a conversation with the audience, and progressively throughout the special, he gets more and more naked for specific parts, until the very end of the special when he is literally on the piano completely naked in front of the audience. This scene cuts and we get one final scene. A now disheveled, unkept Bo Burnham with a long, scraggly beard and now dressed in white overalls finds himself once again alone in this room with the door finally opened. Bo is free and he finds himself back on stage, allowed to face the audience once again. But when forced to face the audience, he finds himself wanting back in. The door's closed behind him though. He can't get back, he can't escape, and the audience progressively laughs louder and louder at him as he once again panics on stage, completely vulnerable to the audience. So before I score this movie, I want to say one more thing, and that is just how much I respect Bo Burnham as a musical talent. Not just in this special, but in almost everything I've ever seen Bo Burnham do, the music is fantastic. He is extremely funny, and I could only hope to ever produce a piece of content that's half as good as anything Bo Burnham's ever done. For the score, I'll start with the writing, and Inside is a little bit hard to judge. It's a strange mix of a stand-up special with interconnected bits that function toward a common goal, but it also has elements of some film aspects too. And it isn't funny all the time. It doesn't even seem to be trying to be funny as much as a traditional stand-up special would. It's also almost entirely musical. Judging it strictly on its songwriting, it's fantastic. The only complaint I can really make is that it struggles to put a plot together, but also if you judge it as a comedy special, then it doesn't need a plot. But I'm trying to put it in the space with movies as well. So I think I can only fairly give it an 8 out of 10. Usually the next section would be the plot. Like I already addressed, there really isn't a plot to this movie. Since this is my channel and I can do whatever the hell I want, I'm gonna give Bo Burnham's Inside an honorary 10 out of 10 for this section because it's a new and daring piece of art people don't really do, and we're far too lacking in new formats in TV and movies. The cinematography from Inside perhaps isn't too impressive until you remember that this was shot entirely by one man alone in a room. From that perspective, the amount of work that went into perfecting the extremely complex lighting and getting the camera angles right is way more impressive. However, I'm trying to rate Inside fairly on a scale that also includes movies, so I think the best I can fairly give it is a 6 out of 10 for the cinematography. Now, I've already spent a fair bit of time discussing the characters from Inside, Bo and the audience. The audience being primarily a stationary object, and Bo is a little bit tough to evaluate. Because of the lack of a plot, it isn't like Bo has an arc, though it's also not like his character goes nowhere. It definitely has a through line. The character's consistent descent further and further into madness, I really think is fantastically done. It appears to be well acted, if you can conceivably call it entirely an act. I'm not 100% sure if this was just Bo Burnham's actual journey or a play that he put on for the audience, but it doesn't matter. The character gets a 7 out of 10. When I originally decided to do this video, I thought that the theme would be a shoo-in for a 10 out of 10, but in writing this review, I really can't give it that. I think that I was confusing topical social commentary with elements of a theme that just isn't as strong as I thought it was. There is a coherent theme, however, in the isolation and self-reflection, specifically in self-reflection to the point of insanity. I think the message in the special is not to be Bo Burnham. Yes, you should self-reflect and use that information to grow and change, but if you've self-reflected to the point where you're just finding yourself miserable, reveling in your own mistakes, and you're unable to find any more value in yourself, then you've likely taken it too far. And I think that that theme can be applied to the social commentary as well. Maybe we need to spend more time working on our problems and getting better rather than reflecting on the sins of the past. So the theme gets a 7 out of 10. So overall, Inside gets a 7.5 out of 10, which is definitely formidable, though it's not as high as I would have expected. I really, really, really love this film. I don't think that everything I love has to be be objectively the best thing in the world. I also don't think that every historic piece of art has to be objectively the best thing in the world. Look at the Mona Lisa. But that doesn't mean that Inside doesn't stand a chance to really stand the test of time. I really think it does. I think that it sums up the year of 2020 better than any history book really could. It gets the feeling that we all had. It gets the feeling of society at the time so right. I can't imagine not looking back on it in 10, 20, or 50 years and remembering exactly what it was like to be there in 2020. Anyway, hit like and subscribe on your way to the next video, and consider making that next video one of mine. I just did a review on Oscar nominee A Real Pain.